So last night around 11:30, I was actually planning about changing the plot of my presentation. Any one of you have been watching the game last night? You know, something happened there, like in Zenica in the game, exactly. So at this point in your life, I'm sure most of you have had experience with working in project teams, and I'm sure within these teams you have not always succeeded very well, although you had like very bright people in your team. This is a similar problem that happened last night during that game, and this is a concept I call actually lost in translation. You will hear hints in my presentation about some movie titles. Lost in translation is one. It's not an advert for it, but it's always worth watching it. So, most organizations have a 50 to 70% project failure rate. Why is that? It is because they don't manage their diversity very well. A thing we're talking about the whole day today, especially this afternoon. I know this number is striking, but you have plenty of research picking between 50 and 70%. So, what's the first episode? Well, the world out there is very diverse, always, somehow. It's just that we don't know what our bias is, how we look at it. The typical diversity that we hear through the media, or even here in university, or even in corporate trainings, is best described by the following picture. What is this? This is a picture trying to show people of different races, different cultures, different looks, and praising that this is something that will prove you success. Well, it might be, but there is one underlying assumption here, that these people not only look differently, which is obvious, but also maybe have different backgrounds. But what if all these people live in LA and went even to the same school and to the same university and to the same faculty? Would it be very diverse? Probably not. Coming back to my field of work, which is always doing something with digital projects, when we talk about the diversity, or the literal diversity, is that at the heart of a project, you have a project manager. In the media, the person taking care of the project, being the nanny, and so on. And all around it, you have a user researcher, then you have a UX designer, front-end developer, back-end developer, visual designers, and UX consultants. Each of these persons, they have their own agenda, which is great, because you need this diverse team in order to put a project together. So, you have a UX designer that wants to create the best user experience he has ever done before. You have the front-end developer. He wants to have the fastest loading website ever produced. So basically you click on it and it's working without any bugs. Well, the visual designer wants to basically create a design, a website, like the one picture in the beginning of my presentation that I've shown you. But this doesn't all fit together. And then at the end of this chain, you have the project manager who has to take care of money, budget, and time. So it's like completely different people, like money people, sensitive people, emotional people. That's why these projects fail. When we talk about diversity, and what we have to dig deeper into is the following. Diversity is not just looking differently by any means, or having different beliefs, which we all put into this demographic sector. Diversity also has an experiential part, which is basically deducted based on our experiences. I mean, this afternoon we've been talking here in the coffee talk about experiences that people made during the war, or even Fares, that was talking right before me, was living here and had some ideas how he could develop his PhD based on the experiences here. This is all experiential. And then we have cognitive. And cognitive diversity is, in terms of projects, the most important part. Why? Because it distinguishes us not by our looks, or maybe because by some frames we have experienced, but by the way we think. Basically, there are two factors we consider being cognitive. There's knowledge processing, and there is the perspective we put into it. To give you an example, knowledge processing means, are you a person that goes deep to solve the problem, like you're specializing into it, or are you able to be wider and absorb more problems but not going deep? Perspective is basically the view you look at the problem. But what does that say to you when you're setting up a team, or why does that matter? Well, problem with the cognitive diversity is it's not visible. It's not visible at all. I mean, if I would now ask you what kind of person are you in this framework, you would have any idea. And if I look at you, I wouldn't have any idea. So what do? Well, before we answer that, I'll show you a chart. And this is the only numerical chart for today. But it's a very interesting one. Harvard Business School, or Harvard Business Review, has done a recent study in the two factors, the knowledge processing and the perspective, and has assigned the same task to different teams. The teams were built up either mixed or same. This you see here by the standard deviation. For those of you who do not know what standard deviation means, the bigger that number is, the more different the people were in the group, the more diverse, cognitive-wise. And the smaller the numbers means the more similar they were. And there's one striking thing. Team A finished in 21 minutes and has been the most, or almost the most diverse group. Team B has been a bit more diverse. And then if you look at E and F, these guys were the most similar ones. And they failed, they couldn't solve the problem, and it was an easy task. I read in the details what happened with Team F. It was a team of mechanical engineers, same school of thought, same personalities, and instead of solving this as a group, you know what they did? They tried to solve it individually and then compare the results and pick the best result. So now that we know that concept, and that we know that when we talk about biodiversity, it's not only by our looks. There are plenty of methods or frameworks that have been developed in the organizational behavior study field, but one of the most accessible ones and easy ones is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. I don't know, has anyone heard of this MBTI? Excellent. So it basically distinguishes around 4 factors and puts people either into extroverts, introverts, if they're sensors or intuitives, thinkers, feelers, judgers, and perceivers. And all combinations are possible. And depending on the task you have to solve, or the project you're setting up, you better test your people. You better test your people and see, do I have a fit there? What is if I put a team together all of extroverts? Think about my chart with setting up my team with the circles. What if they're all extroverts? Well, they probably kill themselves in the team. They will not finish the project eventually. What if you have only thinkers in the team and you're there to create a marketing campaign for an emotional product, let's say baby diapers? It will probably be really difficult to transmit the message. Who hasn't done it? Do it today, compare yourself with others and with your peers. Having learned this at the beginning of my career, I thought I have found a solution and my problems in managing teams are solved. I'm like, hey, cool, this is cool, I'm gonna do that, and it's gonna be great. Not really. Anyone seen Mozart in the Jungle? The TV series? Well, it's a good recommendation because he develops similar steps in his development like we do in our presentation or what I did in my career. Chaos still reigns. Why? I mean, I've chosen the right people and I checked and there's a good fit. Well, when you have very different people in the room, these people may speak different languages. I mean, they still speak, let's say, English or Bosnian language, but they still can speak different perspectives. when I speak and I have not been in your shoes, how am I supposed to know what drives you or what are your problems? So what then happened, if you don't bring empathy into this playfield, you're gonna fail because people will start fighting or at least discussing or not feeling understood. But what is empathy in detail? Well, trying to feel what others feel, trying to understand, trying to appreciate the people, what they do, and obviously stepping into their shoes. So, not having a big ego, leave the ego outside the room, and try to be someone reflecting from the perspective of that person. And that applies really to designers, UX designers, developers, because all the stories you hear in my industry when we have such conferences is, oh, you know, they're stupid, they're difficult, yeah, designers, you know, like they burn all your budget, and the developers, they miss deadlines, and so on and so on. Well, it's not easy as that. But as you have learned from this presentation, there are always different dimensions to it. And even empathy has an emotional part that is like, I try to feel how you feel, to understand you. There's the compassionate part, and most importantly, there is the cognitive part. And cognitive empathy means I understand the way you think and the way you solve problems. I don't have to support it, but I understand it. And we're gonna discuss within this project or our assignment based on that problem. And we will not get any emotional about it. We'll fix it. So now I had the second part. So I knew I had, well, I learned, not I knew, I learned. I need a diverse team, fine, I managed that with all the different types. I know we have to bring empathy into the team, but how exactly did I put all these pieces together? And that is my third episode, my career. I'm not the star here, but the star is born. Who is that? It's a concept that I call the creator. As you see, the project manager has moved from the center of the project, and the creator is within. The creator is not the boss, you know, like, he's a person that has lots of empathy, obviously needs some experience, has to carry the main idea of the project. I mean, imagine you're producing an app for a bank here in Bosnia. Well, all the things you have to carry with the idea what you want to solve, what all you want to put there. This is not a task that any of the single functions can carry out alone. This creator is a motivator and a coach, a go-to guy, or go-to girl, woman. He needs to be hands-on. He needs to be a team player. He needs to put different skills together. Since all project teams need to be like a good orchestra, he needs to be a conductor. And in brackets here, and not a boss. We have bosses, but we have learned with the 50 to 70% of the projects that failed that actually it's not the boss who's managing this. It's a person responsible to carry it out. Like we learned in the previous TED Talk or the coffee talk from Trevor, well, actually Trevor was the creator here because Trevor had the idea that we need to do something. He was not the boss of the mission or boss of the project organizing a concert, but he had the idea. And he probably has put all the pieces together and was talking to different persons in an empathic way to get this thing done. Thank you very much.